Hello, Jessica Rice here, and I just wanted to welcome you. Thank you for joining me on this live. I'm still always getting used to going live. I think as a coach, I spend a lot of time really cluing in, listening to my clients, and going live is it's always kind of this interesting shift for me. So thank you so much for joining me. I wanted to talk a little bit today about, how do you determine what that next phase of your growth looks like? What is it that you're wanting to move into? Oftentimes, when I'm working with clients, that's the question that they're coming in with. And it can be for a variety of reasons. It can be that they really want to move up, they want to grow within their career, they want to grow within their company. They're trying to determine what types of roles would be a good fit for them. It can also mean, whether we want to transition to another company, to another type of role, or completely pivot. I think it's really important to take note is why we want to take a pivot. Why do we want to shift where we are currently to something new? And this can be true in a number of ways, because if you are in a newer leadership role or you're starting out kind of in your leadership journey, it's natural to want to continue to grow and rise within your career. And you might be looking at more extrinsically motivated areas, your title, your role, your salary, things that show up for you as an indicator of what you consider to be success. When you are becoming more senior in your leadership, those types of extrinsic motivators start to shift for you and they become less important. While salary might be something that you have built your life around, it's no longer the most important aspect. And so you're looking at more intrinsic motivators, your fulfillment, purpose, value, meaning, what type of legacy you're leaving, what type of impact you're making, and how your role is determining what your overall lifestyle is looking like. And so when I'm working with a lot of senior VP, senior director levels, those are the types of questions that are coming up because we're not sure, do I really want to take on more? How much more is required of me in order to continue forward? Do I need to learn more? Do I need to take on learning more certifications? Do I need to go back to school? What types of responsibilities are going to be on my plate? How many hours will I be working? And so these are really natural things to take into consideration. It's incredibly important because we want to really think about what our core values are. What are our non-negotiables? What are the things in our lives that we need to have in order to find fulfillment, find success, and whatever that looks like, for us? And there's an overall level of freedom that oftentimes we are looking for in addition to choice. So really thinking about those internal versus external motivators and how do those weigh out or balance within our lives. At some point, I think we start to have this epiphany. I was talking about Chip Conley the other week in one of my newsletters, which was, as we start to go reaching more midlife, and midlife is this very interesting word because we are actually living so much longer than we ever used to. So mid-stage in our career, depending on the career you are in, can be varying and very different. If you're in the tech space, mid-career could actually be when you're even younger than you think, could be in your 30s. So really start thinking about, what does that look like for you? And as you're, contemplating this, what level of commitment and stamina do you need in order to continue on at the pace that you are currently at? There are so many things that are vying for our attention constantly. There are so many things that we are having to take into consideration. Obviously, the economy right now has, left us a little bit uncertain. And so that can breed a lot of fear and anxiety and worry when we're thinking about how do we make a shift towards something that we are interested in, towards something that's going to bring that alignment within our lives. And so those types of things can start to well up inside of us and can be paralyzing because we're not sure what it is that we should do next. And that word should is this judgment that we carry within ourselves. It's a judgment about guilt and shame for even feeling the way that we do in relation to our role, and feeling like we should feel happier or we are lucky to even have the role and the opportunities that we've been given. And this is where I want to make this really clear distinction, because I think when we're putting a lot of value around our success on those extrinsic motivators, our title, our role, our salary, we can attach so much of our identity to these things. And that starts to determine how we feel about ourselves. It determines the value that we feel that we bring. And so when we're thinking about that attachment to those things, then we can start having questions in relation to, am I worthy of a change? What can I truly bring? What skills can I possibly have, especially if we're considering, being phased out to a certain extent, or that our skills aren't on par maybe with upcoming talent, the types of concerns that might be in relation to, do we know enough? Can I provide enough answers? And I think as leaders, especially, we struggle with this idea, this paradox of having to have enough answers and knowing when it's okay not to have answers, when it's okay to lean into our teams a little bit more, when it's okay to seek answers from others and delegate that out. And so there's a whole lot of other strategy in relation to leadership and how you move into this kind of orchestration of leadership versus having to be kind of in this controlling state. But more so, what can start to happen too is that we develop worries and anxieties that may or may not be fully true. And so in positive psychology, we talk about flow. They talk about flow in relation to the level of challenge. So how high is the challenge in the role that you're in? And skill. How high is the skill? And so, if the higher the challenge and the higher the skill, so you have greater skills here and it's a higher challenge, you might find yourself up in this higher quadrant of flow because you're tapping into your natural talents, your natural skills, resources, and you might be operating in a state that you are truly enjoying the work that you're doing. It starts to shift a little bit when we have maybe a high challenge and we're still uncertain in the skill level that we bring to that. That can lead to anxiety and worry. And it can also shift if there's a lower challenge and we have high skill, and so we've outgrown our role to a certain extent, and that can lead to boredom or demotivation. And so really understanding, where do you fall kind of within this spectrum of flow for yourself? This starts to get really interesting when we're thinking about then, how do we grow? How do we want to shift and change? And really taking into account our true skills, really acknowledging them, because oftentimes we just discount things because we're comparing ourselves. Our barometer of comparison is so much higher, and we're not meeting the expectations. And we're also placing so much happiness on these expectations. And so there's undue emphasis on things that are external to us. If you can think about it this way, the comfort zone might be in the center. And this is where you would like to stay. Oftentimes we're comfortable, we know it, it's safe, we feel supported. And then if you grow a little bit more, then there's kind of this learning section here. And this is where you can start to stretch yourself. You're starting to grow, you're starting to learn. This is kind of this optimal state to be in because we're not staying stagnant and we're kind of growing. What starts to happen though in our careers and our roles sometimes is we start to move in what they call the danger zone. And the danger zone is where we are drinking from a fire hose every single day. We're having to take on so much more than we have capacity for. It's leading to stress and burnout. It's leading to feelings of inadequacy and disappointment and frustration because we are just not at capacity. We're not capable of learning at the rate that's being required of us. And so then we start to feel like maybe we don't have enough of what's required or enough skill because we're not being put into a situation where we can incrementally continue to grow. So our bubble starts to get bigger, but if we overreach or we overextend out of it, that's where we start to think, well, Am I really capable? Am I really worthy? Should I even be considering this next level? I want to, but do I really have what it takes? If you think about plants, trees and flowers and grass, it's always reaching for the sun. It's always reaching to grow, but it's never growing outside of its own capacity. It's never growing beyond what it was intended to become. Now, if you have the right growing conditions, sure, it will keep growing and it might grow bigger than originally, but it doesn't go from a sapling to a fully, fledged redwood tree overnight. It takes thousands of years. And that's true for us too. It can take some time for us to incrementally grow. We have to provide the room and the space necessary for our brains to adapt, to grow, to change. This evolution of ourselves is so important to take into consideration when we're thinking about what our barometer of success looks like. Because if we are putting those undue expectations on ourselves to grow at such a rate that we cannot keep up, and we start to stagnate or we start to fall off, now we're dealing with shame, guilt, worry, stress, and overall just feelings of being defeated. Those types of feelings send a signal to our mind that we shouldn't move forward, that we can't grow, that we're not capable. When we truly logically know that any situation that we've been put into, that we've succeeded in, is because we've put that determination, that resilience, that grit necessary into it. And so therefore we could do the same in another situation. When we're thinking about how we shift careers, how we pivot, how we move, it's really important that we consider the incremental changes required. Every day you're making decisions. Every day you are learning something. Every day you are having new insights. But for some reason, when it comes to expectations of ourselves, we expect rapid growth overnight. We expect rapid change. We expect that we will go from here to here, and that somehow with the wave of a wand, our lives are going to be completely different. This is where we fail ourselves in our own thinking, because we are putting success, we are putting happiness in something that's not achievable within the time frame that we're setting out. If you can think about your goals, where it is that you want to see yourself down the road, maybe 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. This can change for everybody. It depends on where you are at in your career. It depends on where you want to be in your life. And start to work backwards, looking at where those gaps might be for yourself. And being honest. Being really honest with yourself. Acknowledging your strengths. Acknowledging the things that you do well. Where did those things come from? How did you know them, learn them? Are they innate? And also recognizing, where are you not as strong? Are those things that you need to grow into, or are those things you just simply need to have awareness around? We can't always grow our weaknesses because it's not time well spent. It's better to grow our strengths and see where we can keep taking those. So when we are thinking negatively and we're putting ourselves in this self-defeated mode, we are essentially shutting our minds down to exploring other possibilities. We are shutting down from considering that we are capable, because we're trying to take this giant leap. And as much as I love Gay Hendricks' book, really, when you're reading the book, he isn't talking about some giant leap. He's really talking about looking internally at what those hidden genius portions of yourself are. What are those little nuggets of wisdom that you bring, that only you bring? What is that is unique for you? And start considering that, and then how that aligns with the other pieces in your life, your core values, those non-negotiables, and the type of life that you want to start seeing for yourself. And what does that look like? And really paint that picture. Really paint. Is it within the trajectory that you are currently in? Is it really within the company that you are currently in? Is it moving up? Is it taking on more? Because there are seasons in our life when we are ready and we are willing and we are motivated. And then there's seasons of our lives where we start to have a different perspective and we start to think differently. And that can look like a lot of things. It can be shaped in so many ways. But here you are, moving from low energy to high energy. And it really depends on the phase that you're ready for within your career. It really depends on what it is that you want to bring forth. And what is it that you are willing to do? And what is it that you are no longer willing to do? So taking that really into account. So I was hoping that, maybe this would bring some clarity and maybe some focus in terms of we are living in uncertain times and ambiguity. But if we think about from an Eastern psychological standpoint, we tend to try to really attach ourselves to these kind of intangible things, and we let it define who we are. And so what we're doing is essentially stating that we are never in flux and we cannot change. So when we attach ourselves to our role, our title, the amount of money that we make, and that determines our success, and that type of success then determines our happiness. Then we get to a certain role or a certain level within our lives and we wonder why we're not as happy as we thought we would be. That's where we can start to unattach or detach from those expectations and really taking in flow of our lives, recognizing that everything has a rise, it has a change, and then it has a diffusion. And that is the state of life. There is nothing that's ever fixed. And so if we can be more in flow and more adaptable and more willing to explore different possibilities, different outcomes, different salaries, different roles, different titles, the more we'll be opening ourselves up to possibilities. The more we can open ourselves up and stop putting ourselves in our own little box and essentially chaining ourselves to an idea that may not exist. Rather, opening up to things that may exist that we are unaware of. We just have this tendency to do that. And so if we can think differently about that, if you can think about how you can detach yourself from the expectation that you have put where you should be in your life right now, what type of role or title you should have been at now, what type of life you were supposed to be leading by now. And instead, be open to pivoting, be open to change, be open to taking one step in front of the other, not bounding 10, 20 steps, but just taking one and taking inventory of your life. And then if you see that you want to make a shift, you see that you want to make a change, this is the goal for you. And then working backwards and really thinking about what is an alignment for you, that you have clarity. You can say this is a hell yes, or you can absolutely say this is a hell no. And it doesn't matter if they offer you a 60K raise, a 100K raise. If it's not in alignment with those core values, you have the clarity to walk away. And the same for vice versa. If this is interesting and you're really wondering, okay, where do I start from here? Am I ready to move on? Am I ready to move up, move out, move on? I have a quiz on my website. I'll put it into the notes. And it's a very short quiz, but in there, you might get some clarity in terms of what you're ready for, what phase you might be ready for. And based on the phase, I'll send you a checklist, some tips, and some strategies that you can start working towards to help you think about what are those next moves that you should be making to help you. It isn't something that will happen overnight. It is something that will take some time. It is something that you can breathe into and unfold yourself into. You don't have to take it on. You don't have to drink from a fire hose when it comes to your own life. You can just do it simply. I'd love to know, does this resonate for you? What types of questions come up for you when you're thinking about how you want to move forward? I would love to meet with you and chat. Thank you so much for joining, and